Hello everyone. Here's a little bit of a recap on the water cycle. You would have talked about this in the Weather Unit Grade 5, possibly, and if not, these seem to be similar things to what you guys know already or have expected. However, we're still going to go over it a bit. This water cycle is going to really explain what's happening in my little mini ecosystem jar with my succulent, and yeah, so we're going to get into it. So a water cycle is what cycles the water throughout the biosphere in different ecosystems, and it is through the process of precipitation, condensation, and evaporation. The water collects in different places on the earth, and it runs to puddles, lakes, oceans, etc., and then through it, it'll go through this cycle. So as the water sits and is heated by the sun's rays in these collections, it evaporates and turns into a gas. That process is evaporation. Then the water vapor that is created from this water being heated and turned into a gas goes up to the sky, condenses, gets colder as it's further away from the earth. It becomes a lot more colder, and then it turns back into water, forms up with dust particles to create clouds, and when it gets heavy enough, it drops to the earth as precipitation. And that's where it collects on the ground, goes into the groundwater, and continues the cycle as we know and love. So in my mini ecosystem, there's my mini ecosystem. The jar is sealed, and since it's sealed, it has its own water cycle inside here. So inside this jar it's creating its own ecosystem. So this wise, you'll never have to add more water to the jar. As long as the jar is sealed enough and it's airtight, you will never have to add more water. So because it's near the window, it also gets heat from the sun's rays. The water is going to evaporate and condensate on the walls and the top of the jar. At this point, there's not really clouds forming because it's not quite that. You don't have enough space in there, and it's not quite cold enough, and doesn't have the same kind of things as the Earth and the biosphere does. However, those droplets on the walls are kind of like the clouds forming, and then once they get heavy enough water gets collected there, they're going to slide back down to the soil, just like precipitation would be. So it's like precipitation. And so finally, an important piece to note about the water cycle and importance of water quality in an ecosystem is pollution. So many of you have actually already done inquiry projects or listened to others' inquiry projects on water pollution, and this pollution can take many different forms. You have garbage in oceans, leaching of chemicals into groundwater, and there's many, many more ways that we pollute our Earth. We are limited to the amount of fresh water that we have on Earth, and it is important that we try as hard as we can to keep all of the fresh water that we have clean and fresh and unpolluted so that it can be used to sustain life. So one thing to note is just leaching. That's the process of chemicals soaking through the earth, getting absorbed into the groundwater, getting picked up in trees, and joining to these chemicals get added into the water cycle, which is bad. It can lead to things like acid rain, as well as dead trees and blighted areas. So anyways, that's a bit about the water cycle. Thank you, and have a good day.